Hey, welcome back. Monday Night Football. We're going to roll the clock coming up in the second 5 bets for you tonight in 5 minutes. That's right. When the clock goes, that's all we focus. That's all we care about. We don't interrupt to tell you anything else. In fact, if you're new here, we appreciate you joining us on the Odd Shopper channel. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, be part of the fastest growing sports betting community across this entire site of YouTube. How about that? Now, we always give you a sneak peek where we're going first. Before we dive into this and start the clock, you're wondering why this video is upwards of 10 minutes when we're doing 5 and 5, because I have other things I need to tell you about. But at the very least, if you're going to hang with me for a second or two, the very least I can do is wet your beak, give you a little appetizer here. And that, of course, is the Rams -2.5. So we'll get into that. We'll get into the other 4 bets as always. As I asked, the bottom is there for you, the thumbs up, the notification bell, most importantly, that you subscribe here. And I'm going to tell you about what you're seeing above and below my screen from DraftKings, where you can bet $5 on any NFL money line, which is tonight, of course, and you win $200 once that bet hits. So it's a beautiful opportunity to build a bankroll. All right, you know the drill here. 5 bets, 5 minutes. Let's start the clock. And we go to the Rams, -2.5 here. That's where I want to begin. And it's not just the Rams winning this football game, which I have. I want to stretch this, and I'm not going to go any more than -2.5. We have seen so far 23 games, including what just happened on Sunday. 23 games with decisions by 3 or fewer points. That's historic right now. We haven't seen anything like that in the NFL. I know not to push this by more than 2.5. I'm still covered below a key number. I have the Rams winning this game. So it makes more sense for me to push this alternate spread at -2.5 and simply get that better return at +120. So that's essentially where I begin here, is taking advantage of the circumstances on the spread more so than anything else. All right. Next play here for you has to do with kicking. Over 3.5 total field goals made. We know Matthew Stafford, the Rams, have struggled head-to-head outside of that playoff game against the Niners. We know that Allen Robinson is struggling, coming in for Robert Woods and kind of filling that second void. We know that Stafford was playing hurt. It just wasn't clicking overall. I don't think it's going to full-on click. And look, the Rams are going to have to settle a couple of times for kicks. On the other side, we're going to come back to this. Trent Williams being out is the key reason why I'm going Rams, trying to stop that Rams defensive front, not just Aaron Donald. Oh, by the way, the Niners already dealing with new bodies, guard, center, guard. It's a mess. Yeah, Jimmy G's back, but that's not enough for me. They're going to settle a lot for drives, and that's going to be a big problem for the Niners. That's why we want to go under 3.5, over 3.5 total field goals at +125. Next one's easy. Cam Akers, under 42.5 rushing yards. The rushing game has been repulsive. 3.4 yards per carry as a team. They're the third lowest rushing average at 72.3 yards per game. Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson. I mean, look, Henderson's number is just so low. Otherwise, we would slam that one. But the Niners defense certainly good enough to take advantage of this. And even against worse, inferior defensive units, the LA Rams have struggled mightily. Worst we've seen under Sean McVay trying to move the football on the ground. They have been full-on neutralized, and we want to take advantage of that more so than anything else really in this game. All right, we'll stay in this page here and move to another prop, and this is also an easy one. Prime time, lights are on, Cooper Kupp, over 93.5 receiving yards. We'll lay the 130. We've got plus money on 2 of them. Now we're starting to lay a little bit. That's fine here. The biggest reason is because of what I mentioned earlier. Not having Allen Robinson truly fit in with this offense like they expected. Cooper Kupp is just taking on as much as humanly possible. And this is the beauty of it. It doesn't even matter how much more they add to Kupp's workload. It's not going to impact him at all. If anything, his numbers are just going to go up. 93.5. I'm pretty surprised at the time in which we're doing this that this number is below 98.5.
Quarterback props have been easily my best for props this year.
Those were my two mess-ups yesterday. I was under on Goff and Matt Ryan.
I went under on Ryan, too. So that was like the one quarterback that I didn't get.
As if you didn't get your fill yesterday, more NFL action tonight. Some Monday Night Football, the Rams and Niners going at it. And we're breaking this game down from the view of No House Advantage, where you can pick these player props. We'll tell you all about the websites and what you can do there over the course of the next 30 minutes and some of the best strategies for the game tonight. I'm Pete McCarthy with Geoff Ulrich. We got Mike Lawrence producing. And Jeff, how we doing coming off a busy weekend?
No, I'm doing good, man. And obviously busy as I had to confirm with you that we were talking Monday Night Football again, that it was still Monday and we hadn't progressed all the way to week 5. But no, I mean, I'm actually looking forward to this game. Interested to see San Francisco. San Francisco's a team I had big hopes for before the year. The Trey Lance stuff, a lot has happened, but this is a big game for them. I think they got to get it together and got some interesting skill players to bet on and parlay with at No House. So
the Niners, I mean, they were so exciting in prime time last time around that we just couldn't wait to get them back. They get this Monday night matchup with the Rams after that ugly slog against the Denver Broncos. So again, we'll be breaking this game down throughout and some of the props over at No House Advantage. Give us a like, subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways, and much more here on the Stokastic DFS channel. By the way, just hitting 80,000 subscribers. We appreciate that. And once you subscribe, hit that notification button. That'll get you alerts when our shows go live. Be sure to also check out today's free premium tools and data, which are MLB player projections. And if you're still playing MLB DFS, and why not, don't forget that everything we have to offer for MLB night slates on DraftKings is also 100% free for the remainder of the season. Gives you a great chance to give our tools a shot before purchasing. Regular season ends on Wednesday, so make that happen the next few days. Just click the DraftKings Night Owl link below to check out tonight's tools and projections. So No House Advantage, this is the way it shapes up tonight. You got 3 contests to take a look at. A $15 entry, that'll get you $10,000 for first place, $1,600 total in that contest, which is down a bit from last week. There's been a lot of overlay at No House Advantage. There was again yesterday, so be sure to keep an eye on that throughout the night. There's also a $5 entry, which can net you up to $1,000 for first place. The first thing that jumped out to me, just looking at these props, Jeff, is we only have 21 total props in this game to mess with. That's not 21 players. That's 21 total props. So I think you're going to have to do a little work to be different on the board tonight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I talked about this video talked about this game this morning already. And there is a path that I like to be different with this game. And we're definitely going to get to that. But you're right. I mean, like with some of these primetime slates, I mean, we got a 10K to first prize, and you only have, again, as Pete just mentioned, this one is probably the shortest one we've had with just 21 props. So, you're going to have to really think about going outside the box here because, again, No House Advantage. And this is something I like that they do. They're different from the sports books because their props tend to be on average higher. So what does that do? It drives people towards taking a lot of unders. That's fine. And we do have a lot of the unders projected as strong plays. But to be different, if you're going to go over, I mean, that is probably where you're going to differentiate. And I think with a game like this, you can super do that and get really low ownership on some players. So, we'll get into it right away here, obviously. But yeah, definitely an interesting slate for No House.
And we'll break it down player by player. Just big picture in this game. The Niners are a 2.5-point favorite playing at home against the Rams. Over under pretty low at 42.5. Speaking to some of those unders, weather shouldn't be much of a factor. 63 degrees. Will be relatively windy. It is San Francisco after all. But it shouldn't be enough to really affect a whole lot as far as the passing game goes. That's not the expectation. Let's get into just big picture. What expectations do you have for this game? I think a lot of people are expecting a a grinded out kind of affair with the way these two teams been playing of late.
Yeah, for sure. And again, the last few games they've played have kind of been under the total. So I think we got a 42.5 total right now. It's not a big total. And the last few games we've seen have gone under. At the same time, you've got a San Francisco offense that outside of Trey Lance, like they're at full health. Like Kittle's back, Deebo's there, Ayuk. Okay, the running backs are banged up, but I mean, like the San Francisco running back position is just like a pick a player, so it's not that big a deal. And then on the Rams side, I mean, they've been moving the ball with Cooper Kupp, obviously, and Stafford's been throwing some picks. He's got 5 interceptions already, so I think that there is a recipe here for this game to potentially, I don't know if you want to use the word shootout, but just be a bit kind of like last night, where like one play leads to a quick score. The other team scores quick, and all of a sudden, like we've got like a 21-point quarter or something like that. So the recipe's there for it, and it's something I don't mind playing for with the pick'em contest on No House, where again you're playing up against other players. So there's some players that I'm fairly bullish on here, and I do expect that you're going to see a few breakouts from some of these skill players, because we have high end skill players on both sides.
Hey, let's go full Seahawks Lions on this game. Why not? Put up 93 points and let's have some fun, hit some overs and make that happen. But probably not going to quite hit that.
Probably not. I mean, I don't think the San Francisco defense is going to allow that to happen, but
no, nor the Rams defense for that matter. But all right, so let's start looking at some of the props here. We'll begin with Matthew Stafford. 270.5 is his passing yardage line. It's pretty high up there. 1.5 passing touchdowns. We have that as very fair. And then half an interception. As you mentioned, the INT has been a problem for him, and that's going back a long time. But he's thrown at least 1 pick in 2 out of 3 games thus far this year. What jumps out at you as far as those 3 props on the board for the Rams quarterback?
Yeah, it's the passing total for Stafford 270. It's big. I mean, San Francisco, their secondary isn't great. Like it's definitely where you want to attack them, but they just have such a good pass rush. They're a hard team to pass on. So that right off the bat it's a big total. At the same time, I feel better about the interception prop. 0.5 interceptions. Stafford has thrown a high completion rate this year, but the interceptions have been an issue. I don't know if that's part of the elbow issue, maybe with the accuracy, maybe just causing him to sail more balls, or if it's just bad luck.
It's just him. I mean, he did this last year too.
It's true. I was just going to say, like he threw like 14 picks last year. So, I mean, this is just Matthew Stafford. He's got a great arm, and it leads to more chances. And, he doesn't quite have that Aaron Rodgers, like he's not quite there, but he tries, and it just leads to picks. He threw an interception every game against the 49ers last year. And as I mentioned, the pressure the 49ers bring, I expect Matthew Stafford to throw a pick in this game. We have him projected for over 1.0 interceptions, which is a really big projection for us. Even the high end projections for quarterbacks usually don't get over 1. So, I mean, this is a massive, I like this one. I know interceptions are tricky because a game flow can just take away, like Stafford could throw. There are scenarios where Stafford could throw like 20 times in this game because the Rams defense scores or something like that.
That was last week against Arizona.
Exactly. Right. So that could happen. I think that's a fairly unlikely scenario for this game because San Francisco is a good team. So let's go the over here. I think this is one where you use high up in your lineups. You feel pretty good about it. And you kind of go to the next one.
Yeah, we don't expect the Rams to be running the ball 50 times tonight and playing that kind of game and taking Stafford out of it. So I do think you're right. I think this is pretty game script non-dependent with the interception, that it'll be there regardless of the kind of game that we see played here, looking at Stafford's track record, the way it plays out. So that's my favorite as well, looking at that interception and hit the over. It's one I always like looking at, especially if you're going to play a team to lose, which you could play as well with the San Francisco 49ers being a favorite in this game. On the other end, Jimmy Garoppolo, another high number as far as the passing yardage goes, at least for him at 240.5 yards. We're looking at 1.5 passing touchdowns, which we have is relatively fair, and then half an interception for Garoppolo as well. I think the under on the passing yardage, at least as far as our numbers go, that's looking the best, but none of these exactly a slam dunk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so, and this is where I kind of like getting a little bit weird. Like, Obviously Garoppolo, it's a big passing total for Garoppolo. It's way bigger than the sports books. 240 for Jimmy G. And it's just not something that we see.
Well, that's not true. Last year, he was over this number in 8 of 15 regular season games.
Okay, fair enough.
It's not totally outlandish.
I would not have expected that. I would not have expected that. So it's still okay. Let's put it this way: then it's still a lot bigger than what we got at the sports books this week, which is obviously not shocking considering what they did last week, against the Denver Broncos. So, and this actually works to your point, because I think taking the San Francisco passing offense and taking overs on Garoppolo and pairing him with a Debo over or like a Kittle over is a really good way to be contrarian, because as Pete just mentioned, like this offense last year was pretty good. They were a little bit up and down, and there were games where Jimmy G would throw for 180 and he didn't have to do much, but there were also games, as you mentioned, where he'd throw for 300 yards and Debo would get him a bunch of junk yards after the catch, and Kittle was healthy. And I'm a little bit shocked to hear that, but at the same time, thinking back like to how good the San Francisco offense was last year, I guess I really shouldn't be to hear that his prop was around this on average most of the time last year. So I think this is a good spot to take it. You look at the Rams pass defense too. They have not been good this year. Like they've struggled. Like they're worse. They're kind of regressed from, yards per play standpoint as well. Jalen Ramsey is allowing, more big plays, or at least he has through 3 weeks. Last week, obviously playing the Cardinals didn't show up as much, but I like the spot for Jimmy G and the San Francisco passing offense to get on track. They had the rough week against Denver, on the road in Denver, always tough to play. At home now, I think they can expose the Rams secondary a bit here.
And you're right. It doesn't all have to be air yards for Jimmy Garoppolo. It can be after the catch, whether it be, George Kittle making a big play, or obviously Deebo Samuel being the kind of playmaker that he is, Jeff Wilson out of the backfield. There's a number of different ways you can take a dunk and still end up with a lot of passing yards for Jimmy Garoppolo in this game. Now, look, we have a 62% chance of being the under, and you can check out our No House Advantage projections for free over at Stokastic. Go to stokastic.com, you go to that NFL, then projections, and you'll see the bottom one. We'll give you the No House Advantage projections there and our chances in terms of simulations. So something to keep in mind with Garoppolo. But as we talked about, it's difficult to get different tonight going over on Garoppolo's passing yards. An easy way to do that, and something that will happen if the game script cooperates, and keep that in mind as well. If you're a new Stokastic Plus Platinum or NFL user, you want to give our NFL DFS tools a test run before purchasing, we got a great offer for you. Get access to all of our NFL DFS tools 100% free for 3 days. This includes full access to all the premium content tools for NFL DS that we have to offer on Stokastic.com, including new tools such as our lineup generator and player compare, as well as player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, boom bust tool, and so much more. So click the link in the description of this video below to activate your 3-day free trial now. Please note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included with this trial offers. That is absolutely money. Be sure to check that out. Wide receivers in this game. Let's stick with the San Francisco offense. We're talking about Garoppolo. If you're going to go over, well, Deebo Samuel, one option, 64.5 receiving yards. The number there, not anything too intimidating. Brandon Ayuk has some big numbers in this game. 4.5 receptions, 55.5 receiving yards on his end. Anything you really like there?
So, we have Ayuk projected as a pretty solid underplay. And I think if I was going to go under on Ayuk, it would definitely be the reception route. 4.5 total for Ayuk. Asking him for 5 receptions, I feel like that's pretty much his ceiling with Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback. Everyone was expecting the Lance Ayuk connection. I was too. But, with Ayuk and Garoppolo last year, we kind of saw – I guess it's more what we didn't see. We didn't really see Ayuk develop into that kind of 1A option. It was more kind of just Debo, Kittle when he was healthy, and then Ayuk would pop up here or there and is kind of fighting for scraps. And we have this projected as a really solid under. It's actually our second highest projected play of the night, the 4.5 receptions going under on it. And again, I like taking the receivers over with Jimmy G over, but this probably isn't where I would do it. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Debo number. The Debo number is pretty big. It's 64.5, but we do have, strangely enough, like not strangely enough, we do have Debo projected for a healthy total here. So it's really like that is where I would go for the receiving yards. Debo also just ate up the Rams last year in multiple different ways on the ground and as a receiver. So I feel pretty good about going Debo, and probably that's where I would go if I was pairing him with Garoppolo. You could think about being really contrarian, going Ayuk over on the yards or something, but I think you're going to need like a big play to get there. Certainly possible, but Ayuk is a player like I would probably be leaving out of my Jimmy G overstacks, and definitely would not be afraid to attack that 4.5 under total either. I think that the receiver that I have the most interested in, just because I think his props are still somewhat depressed, is Kittle. You look at his career versus the Rams as well. He's scored a bunch of touchdowns with them, but he's posted multiple games of like 75, over 85 yards. He's still great after the catch. 55.5 is not tough for Kittle if he's going to get 4 or 5 catches in this game, which I think we should have him projected to do. So if I was going 2 receivers with the Garoppolo in like a DFS lineup or a no house advantage lineup, for the pick'em contest, I'd be looking at Kittle and Debo overs. If Garoppolo gets to over 240, I think both those players probably going to have a very, very good shot at going over their receiving totals.
Kittle last week, 4 catches, 28 yards. I guess really the question is just, is he healthy enough to have that kind of big game, which is why I kind of lean a little bit more towards Debo. But, Samuel gets involved in so many different ways. You don't know if it's going to be just the receiving yards that gets you there. Can we get Kittle 46 yards or even, to 5 catches being another option for Kittle in this game?
Kittle is definitely, the stronger underplay for us. So it's a more contrarian play, and it's definitely riskier. Whereas the Debo one, I think, and again, like we're talking game theory here. We're talking no advantage to pick them where you're going up against other players. I feel like the Debo over will probably actually be a semi-popular play. I think that the Kittle over is not something many people are going to dive into. So we're going a bit off of history, and we're going off the assumption that Kittle is right, and he's still got that after the catch ability. And I think he does. But you're right to bring up concerns. I mean, we haven't seen it from him this year yet. He started off the season injured, but with the matchup and what he's done against the Rams, I think it's worthwhile to include him in Jimmy Garoppolo. Like I said, if you're stacking those overs on the San Francisco passing game.
Somebody's got to get there, and George Kittle certainly has the chemistry with Jimmy Garoppolo over the years, and we've seen it from him, so we'll see what he's able to do. As far as the Rams passing game goes, Allen Robinson, these look like low totals on him, but he's deserving of them with the way it's gone this season. 3.5 receptions, 45.5 yards. And then Cooper Kupp, you can't put a big enough number on the board, it seems, with the way things went, at least the first 2 games this season. 8.5 receptions, 100.5 receiving yards. You don't see the break into the century too often, even with the big numbers we typically see at no house advantage.
Yeah. And we have Kupp projected for an under here. And like you look at his totals against the division, his totals on the road. They're worse in those situations for Cooper Kupp over the last year and a half, but they're still really good. When I say Cooper Kupp has been worse in division games and on the road, it doesn't mean that he's been terrible or anything like that. So, but you do have to keep it in mind. This is San Francisco. I think that if he's going to get semi shut down or just have a mediocre game, it's going to come against a team like San Francisco, where the pass rush will get there. They can be smothering in coverage. They don't have too many other players to worry about. Allen Robinson in the middle of the field is not going to hurt anybody at this point. He's basically just turned into like a decoy or a red zone target. So yeah, I think that Cooper Kupp going under on this, I don't think people are going to be scared off by the 100-yard game. I think they're going to look down this lineup and say, what props can I take on the Rams? Well, I'm going under on Akers. We'll get to that in a second. Robinson stinks. And, there's Tyler Higbee, who people will probably, glean towards as well, but they'll come to the conclusion that the ball is going to Cooper Kupp. And I don't think that they're wrong, but I also think that, there's just so many variables with football, and, the Rams are working in like Brandon Powell, Ben Skoranek now, where we could just see a dominant San Francisco win, and Cooper Kupp maybe ends up with like 7 catches or even 8 catches and hits actually he's got an 8.5 reception total and still ends up under 100 yards. So I do like the Kupp under tonight. Regardless of how you're playing this game, it's a big number. And I just got a lot of respect for the San Francisco defense, who I think are going to be able to slow him down enough to go under. It's a dangerous thing to fade Cooper Kupp, but
I know it doesn't feel good, but that's part of what maybe
even just saying it makes me feel bad, which is why I think everyone's going to take the over still. So if I can't even say it on this video,
it's hard to actually click the button there when you have to. But we're talking about 9 catches. He's got to get at least 9 catches tonight, which is a massive number even for him. We project him in our median. Our simulations are our median number at 7.2 receptions, 90 yards. So he's relatively close with the receiving yardage, even with that huge number there. But sure, yeah, it's hard to hit the under on him. I didn't have the guts to do it when I did my lineup. I do one before I do the show with you, and then usually one after the show with you, and take some of your perspectives and mix them in a little bit. But I was like, I'm just going to leave Cooper Kupp off the board here and not mess with this one. Tyler Higbee, 4.5 receptions, 45.5 receiving yards. Not bad for a tight end here. We lean towards the under, but he's been right around this receiving yardage number and even the receptions quite a bit this year, and it's gotten over 2 out of 3 games in both categories.
Yeah, no, McVay likes to dial up packages for Higbee, and Higbee is a player who's just on the field so much for the Rams. I mean, they basically don't have a backup tight end. They do, but they're like just players who don't get used much in any facet of the game, except on occasion. But Higbee's going to be on the field a lot. Yeah, again, like we were talking about matchups and what San Francisco does well, they do guard against tight ends extremely well. That is one concern here. And, I'm just looking back to last year. I'm just curious now because I didn't look this up before, but just what Higbee did against San Francisco last year. And, 3 for 20 and a touchdown. He just scored a touchdown. And then and 2 for Kendall Blanton went for 5 catches against them last year. So, I mean, Higbee, he went for 6. Okay, Higbee went for 6 catches in Week 18 last year.
I think Higbee is a bigger role for the Rams now too than he did last year.
I agree. I mean, as much as I don't like the defensive matchup, I mean, I think you have to play Higbee as being like the number 2 wide receiver or receiver in this offense. I mean, Allen Robinson to me is he's just not good. I just don't think
he's Julio Jones.
Yeah, he reminds me of a lot of receivers. He reminds me of Sammy Watkins when he was with the 49 or the Rams. But at least Watkins would like catch a deep ball every now and then. Robinson just doesn't even have that in his game. So, I think going over on Higbee is fine here. Like I think a Kupp under, whether you're playing receptions or yards, and then going over on Higbee actually makes a lot of sense. The ball has to go somewhere. Higbee is like I said, he's on the field a ton. His target rate is extremely solid, especially for tight ends. And he really doesn't have that big props. I mean, 45.5, we haven't projected for just under that, which isn't a big stretch. And then the receptions are actually about neutral. Like we haven't projected for about 4.5 receptions. So it's all kind of look good. I like, again, we'll bring it back to my contrarian move, which is to go over on the Jimmy G stuff. Yeah, pair it with the Higbee over because, again, there's just a couple extra targets down late in the game potentially as well. I know that doesn't help my Cooper Kupp thesis, but if the 49ers are just going to be on Kupp the whole game and make other people beat them, then, that should give Higbee some boost as well.
Sure. And we talked about Higbee and Robinson having kind of similar props in this game. Higbee is 24 targets through 3 games. Robinson is half that, 12 targets through 3 games. It gives you an idea where the ball has been going for the Los Angeles Rams. No House Advantage, if you're not familiar with it, the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. You can play in pick'em contests versus other people. You get yourself a shot at 5 figures tonight in the Showdown contest. You can download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, and then climb the leaderboard when you make correct picks. You can also play versus the house and hit up to 20 times your entry. If you hit all of your picks, you can mix in NFL with Major League Baseball, soon NBA, PGA, you name it. So sign up now at the link below. You get a first match deposit bonus of up to $50. Be sure to also check out our NFL lineup generator for No House Advantage, which you can find in the video description below. Daily fantasy sports has been redefined with No House Advantage, so check it out now. Let's get to these running games here. It's not necessarily pretty. I think this is where it gets pretty interesting as well. Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, we can kind of lump them together. Cam Akers has had a lot more carries over the last 2 weeks after being shut out that opening game, and everybody else remembers that. Darrell Henderson ended up being over. Cam Akers didn't get many opportunities, but Akers 27 carries over the last 2 weeks. So we're looking at Akers 50.5 rushing yards and Darrell Henderson 35.5 rushing yards. What do you like to do with the two running back situation here?
Yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned the Akers, play off the top, and like, I got no problem fading Cam Akers here at 50.5. I know Akers, definitely popped up last week, but we're talking about the Cardinals versus San Francisco. It's a pretty big gap between rush defenses there, I think. And I do expect Akers to get more early down work going forward. Like, Sean McVay loves him some Cam Akers, and for whatever reason, that's fine. But he always seems to push towards Akers over just giving Darrell Henderson a legit shot at just holding the number one job. I think Henderson's actually the better running back, but Henderson just in that role he's never really stuck with McVay. So, potentially, like, we could get Cam Akers to like 18 carries and he just gets there from volume, but I don't know, man. I mean, again, we've got a bigger prop. We've got a running back who really hasn't looked all that good this year. He's not explosive. He's not going to be breaking off like 20-yard rushes. You're going to need 20. You're going to need at least 15 carries from Cam Akers. I feel pretty confident saying that to get to 50.5. So it's a really strong underplay. I don't hate the idea of pairing both running backs together and putting unders there. I think that's a way to potentially capitalize on this. I'm a little bit more. I know Henderson is projected as like one of our strongest plays, but I'm a little hesitant about that just because it's a lower prop. And like I said, he's just got more juice to the point where if he broke out like a 15-yard run, I wouldn't be all that shocked. You still need 20 more yards to get there though. So I do like the unders on both these running backs. If I'm picking one, it's definitely Akers. There's so many scenarios where Akers starts poorly, Henderson takes over, Akers just sucks the whole game, or there's just no carries for the running backs because the Rams are down early.
Sure.
So, you can make the contrarian move as well and play for like a, run heavy approach by the Rams. They get out early or something, but I don't know, man. Like, I just don't see that happening very much for the Rams with their run game. So I like fading both these running backs, and I think putting them together is going to be different.
What about your Garoppolo over on the passing yardage stack? And sometimes, San Francisco's playing from behind. I don't know if that's a big consideration for you. Does that, change what you might do with Henderson or Akers here? Yeah. Or you just play the chalk?
You could. I mean, you could definitely, figure an Akers over with the Jimmy Garoppolo over. But I kind of see those scenarios too, where if Akers is running the ball a lot, it might just be such an abject disaster on the San Francisco side for passing that we just don't get there anyways. Because if Akers running the ball a lot, like, I feel like the Rams are just dominating this game to the point of there's just going to be no yards anyways. So yeah. I view the San Francisco passing game as we're going to get there through efficiency. We may only get 28 attempts or something, but like, we're going to get Debo going for big yards. We're going to get Kittle, and that's how they'll get there. And then that'll force the Rams to throw more. But there's definitely different ways you could look at it. I just the Rams, going back to last year, I mean, this team has just been such a bad rushing team, and it doesn't make them a bad team overall. It's just they're just not good at rushing the ball. So playing them to go over against San Francisco here seems to be you're playing for a pretty thin scenario that I just don't think, again, I'd rather go contrarian in other places.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, talk about Matthew Stafford, the over on the interceptions, that kind of correlates with unders on these running backs as well, that Stafford's going to be throwing the football, and it'll just be a matter of to who. Is it Cooper Kupp enough? Is it Tyler Higbee? Where are they going with that football? As far as the Niners go, they love to run the ball. They do have some options, though they're banged up. Jeff Wilson has become the guy right now, 69.5 rushing yards is the number here. I played for a San Francisco win, and I still had a hard time going over on Jeff Wilson at 70 yards, just thinking, Debo can get in there. There's always another running back that gets some opportunities. Jeff Wilson has been over this number in 2 out of 3 games so far this year. We have it as a pretty strong under. And, this Rams defense is no slouch up front with Aaron Donald and company too. Where do you lean with Wilson?
Yeah, Wilson is definitely interesting. It is pretty thin, right? Like the 49ers are so thin. They're getting like Tevin Coleman back on their practice squad. So Normally we think about the 49ers and like there's always someone there to take like 10 carries away from the main running back, but there kind of isn't right now. And I mean, it all depends how you want to play it. And I mean, like playing a Wilson over and then, just going away from the strategy. I mean, playing a Wilson over and then just dabbling in, like maybe you take a Debo over as well. And those are your kind of San Francisco props. They say, well, Debo's going to have a decent day receiving. Wilson's going to do the rest. And then, we'll look to mix in a couple other props of the Rams, maybe to play on the other side. But I do kind of like Jeff Wilson here. I mean, I don't really have a reason to think that he's not going to get the bulk of the carries. I'm just not even sure who else would be taking them away from outside of Debo Samuel, obviously, but that's always a possibility. So, as you mentioned, the one thing that worries me is the Rams defense. And that is why I lean towards the passing overs, but Wilson, just from a volume standpoint, he's one of those players I'd be okay just leaving out of lineups, to be honest, depending on how it was built. If I'm going over on Garoppolo passing, probably leave him out. I don't know if I'd want to attempt an under. You could think about that. But on the other side, like if you're going to put any over on the Rams, like you Kupp or Stafford, you got to love coming back with Wilson over as well. So yeah, he's at a pretty big number. I don't have like a hard take on him. He's kind of a player I just a little bit scared to fade. And obviously depending on the style of build, may not really have a hard take just because we know the volume is going to be there.
Yeah, no, it's a very close play. Just looking up, Debo Samuel, how much he's carried the ball this year. He has 17 carries and over 100 yards rushing. So Debo certainly can get involved in that way. But just a big picture here. You talked about, hey, there's a game flow where Jimmy Garoppolo goes over on the passing yards. You could be the exception having that and then pick a lot of other things off of that. Any other game scripts that you're really interested in and focusing on, especially after talking about this? I liked, Higbee versus Cooper Kupp, and you go over on one, under on the other.
Yeah, no, I think the Higbee versus Kupp one is really interesting. I think that's a good way to set yourself apart. I think that, again, like looking to pair Garoppolo, even overpassing touchdowns with a couple different receivers is going to be a good way to think about things. And then coming back with potentially like a Rams receiver to the over, like a Higbee. You could think about Allen Robinson, I guess. I know I've dissed him. He does have low totals. So that is something you could look at. It's not my favorite play by far, but I think the other way to play it is look at Wilson as like a linchpin where, okay, I'm taking Jeff Wilson overs. Shanahan's going to scheme up a bunch of runs. We're not going to get many Jimmy Garoppolo passes. Maybe you take the unders and you just go under on the board over Garoppolo, Ayuk. And then you come back with like, you could even think about Stafford over and like Kupp over and going hardcore there. So, that is like the other scenario of this game. I know I've brought up the passing game for San Francisco a million times already, but that is definitely the other play. And I think it just revolves around Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson controlling this game, the San Francisco rush offense controlling this game, and then, the Rams coming back on the other side.
All right, Rams Niners Monday Night Football. I have some juice on the game, and you can certainly do that playing the props over at No House Advantage, and you could give yourself a couple of different ways to play this one out. So that way in the fourth quarter, you got a little sweat going. So give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways, much more. And once you do subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. A lot still to come. Major League Baseball full slate today. MLB Live before lock coming your way at 5:30 Eastern. Then back to the NFL at 6:30 Eastern. The deeper dive, looking at this Monday Night Football game a little bit deeper, obviously. Geoff Ulrich, pleasure as always. I'm Pete McCarthy. Good luck, guys.
See you guys.